This story takes place when I was 22 years old. I had just gotten home from a long night of stocking shelves at my local grocery store. I worked the closing shift, so I usually got home around midnight. I shared a cheap apartment with my roommate, Mark. We weren't in the best of neighborhoods, but I just felt lucky to have a place to live that wasn't my parents' basement. I threw my jacket on the coat rack next to the front door and walked into the kitchen to rummage through the fridge for something to eat. I had just pulled a frozen burrito out of the freezer when I noticed something weird. My bedroom door had been slightly open when I walked by the hallway. I know this doesn't sound strange at first, but I specifically remembered closing it that morning when I left for work. I like my privacy, so I always remember to shut my door when I leave for the day. I stepped back into the living room and looked down the hall. "Hello?" I called. There was just dead silence. Not wanting to let the fear get the better of me, I walked across the living room and flicked on the hallway light switch. "Mark, is that you?" I asked. Mark had always been a bit of an odd guy, so I couldn't help but think that maybe he was trying to play some sort of weird prank on me. Maybe waiting to jump out of my closet or something when I entered my room. When I finally got to the bedroom door, I gently pushed it open. The light from the hallway illuminated a large portion of the room. I looked around, definitely feeling the creepy vibes. There was no one there, and nothing looked out of the ordinary. Just the usual, my twin bed, with my nightstand just to the left. I closed the door shut and walked back into the kitchen. I popped my dinner in the microwave and pressed the start button. While that was cooking, I turned on the television, ready to put on a scary movie to watch and relax. Suddenly, I heard a muffled thump coming from down the hall. At first, I thought it was the neighbors or something. They can be pretty loud sometimes, and it's not unusual to hear a loud bump in the night. But then it happened again, and this time I could tell for sure it was coming from down the hall. "Mark?" I called once more. The microwave beeped just then, and I nearly had a heart attack. "Yeah, sorry." Dropped something I could hear him say through the door. I'll admit, I felt a little better knowing that Mark was home. I walked back into the kitchen to get my food, and that's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from Mark. "Hey dude, running a little late here at work. Could you please leave the door unlocked for me?" My stomach dropped to the floor and a chill ran down my spine. I texted back, "Wait, you're still at work?" He responded only a few seconds later. "Yeah, why?" At that moment, there was another noise from the hall and I looked up. The silhouette of a large man was standing there, holding what appeared to be a butcher's knife. I turned and ran toward the front door, hearing the heavy clunk of the man's boots behind me. He wasn't running. Instead, it sounded like he was slowly walking, taking his time. I didn't stop to look back. I ran down the emergency staircase and out into the parking lot where I called the cops. The cops showed up just a few minutes later. They went upstairs and searched my apartment, but they said they didn't find anyone. What they did find still terrifies me to this day. As they were searching the apartment, the cops found a note left on the kitchen table, held under a salt shaker. On that note, only one word was written: soon. I'm a researcher of Nordic history at a fairly famous university in the UK, and recently uncovered something that is unsettling, to say the least. When I say uncovered, I actually mean had something sent to me, as I now spend very little time in the field, preferring to decipher runes and give lectures. What I received was a tablet of Norse runes found in Lapland, which is weird in of itself. It was dated in lab tests to around 400 AD and seemed to be in the style of an epic poem, talking about a certain god. The most bizarre part is that I have found no reference to this god in any pantheon in the area, nor would there be any reason to write Norse runes in an area of northern Finland, one largely uninhabited at this period. Before I post the transcript, I ought to make a note of the runes themselves. They are, frankly, extremely poorly written, scratched onto the slab of rock in a hurry. The rock itself is one from Norway, a fair degree further south, and so may have been taken with whomever took it upon themselves to travel to Lapland, presumably in search of this god. It is highly possible that this shows a sense of urgency at the time of writing and, coupled with the trace remains of bone, and shards of what appeared to be armor found near the tablet, it can be concluded with a fair degree of accuracy that this was one of the last actions of the author of this tablet. In any case, and without further ado, allow me to present to you the tablet. Cast down from the night sky by the gods, untranslatable lives in darkness. God of sleep, of dreams, of the night, he lives always in the waning light. Untranslatable emerges only in the longest of nights, when the strength of men is weak. Cast out for his lust for children, untranslatable seeks them wherever they hide, always hungry, always waiting. Men call untranslatable the great judge, claim he takes note of who is worthy of punishment, but I know the truth. He hungers for all. He cannot perish by the sword, nor fire, nor any form of shaman's magic. Untranslatable may, however, be sated, have his great hunger reduced by offerings of food, so that he may move to the next dwelling. Lord of sleep, he knows when his victims wake. Crying, running, all do not deter him in his wrath for humanity. Held in great chains, the sound of metal on hollow metal precedes his coming. He fears only the light, and so only comes on the darkest days of the year. None may block his entry to your dwelling. He will even enter through your smoke hole if the doors are barred and cannot be resisted. All fear, untranslatable. All fear his coming. So that's the rune tablet. Rather unsettling, in my opinion. The word marked untranslatable is always the same one and corresponds to no words that I'm aware of. Phonetically, however, it translates to roughly Sande class. One can only assume this is the name of the god, but as I said, I can find no reference in any Nordic mythology. If anyone has any clues as to the origin of this tablet, I would be delighted to hear ideas. Edit. Formatting fixed a mistranslation of shaman to druid. I got my countries mixed up. Studying too much Danegeld.